All right. So this hive has 4 frames that are has 4 frames without built-out wax, and so it takes a lot of nectar to build out the wax. So it's wise when you first get a nucleus hive to put sugar water on it immediately. And what they do is they convert that sugar water into wax so that they can build it out. So
I should have sprayed the frames with sugar water.
you can do that too, but what's even better is you put an empty super on top and put a pint jar on top, or whatever you have for a feeder.
Okay,
Let's go get Phil. You can, a simple way of doing it is you take a pint jar. I was told by my mentor, but I'm not sure there's any evidence for it, is he punches the holes this way, so when they put their proboscis in, it doesn't hit a sharp edge on the other side, so they feel the sharp edge on their face side.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that works or not, but so when they stick their tongues through there, it will release the sugar water from inside here.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm not sure that there's evidence to that, but that's what I do because that's what I was told to do.
Okay, and do you think the larger mouth is better? They can.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
And then what's the ratio?
1 to 1. So one so 1 cup of sugar to 1 cup of water. So you usually put in a measuring, just go, or if you're really good at eyeballing it, just eyeball it. The bees don't really care too much. In the early spring when it's really wet, you don't want as much moisture in your hive, so you usually go 2 sugar to 1 water. So 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of water. So there's not as much moisture in their hive.
When should I check my bees? Now
okay.
they're all set
Good
up,
question.
and when
So
I give them their
when you put the
sugar water.
pint jar over, I usually put a 1/2-inch plywood on each side of this, just little rails to give it up a little bit. You've got a nice big hole here, so you can offset it so they still can ventilate from the top if it gets hot, so they can create a flow of air, so just so that they can come in that box a little bit. And then you just put your lid on, and it's sort of like an attic. They can hang out inside. They'll stay mostly inside the bottom box though.
Okay.
Yep. And your question there was, when do I check them next?
Yes. When do I check the bees?
They're just getting set up. I would check them. So if you put a pint jar in there, that size of colony. Oh, good question. When do you put on a super? So when your bees are mostly covered, on a 10-frame hive, it would be 8 frames across, and like fully across 8 frames. Then you would expand before they decide to build swarm cells. In this case, because you are an 8-frame hive, I would go with 7 frames of bees, and then from those 7 frames of bees, you would. These guys are cold. That's why they're sitting on me. They're just trying to warm up. So you go 7 frames across, and then put another super on top.
So 7 frames across in the brood box.
Yep.
7 frames of brood cap.
No, just
capped
bees.
Brood
Bees.
of bees. Okay.
Yeah, if they're like fully across the top of the frame.
Okay.
Yeah. And what you can do too to encourage them to come up into that empty second box is I usually put. Are you using one? This is only 1 brood box. Are you using 2 brood boxes?
2 brood boxes for.
Because the queen can lay out 2. If she's a strong queen, she can actually do 2 10 frames. Most people keep them down so that she's like fully utilizing those 10 frames. You can put a queen excluder and keep her down if you want, but you can move up some of the food, for example. If you want to keep her down below, move up some of the food, because they can bring the food down to the brood just right below them, right?
And when should I do that?
So if there's 7 frames across, I would move a frame up into the top brood box to encourage them to come up there, and they'll move back and forth a little quicker.
And I want the queen to go up there?
It depends on how you want to do beekeeping. This is only 8 frames across. It's your choice. You can keep her down in 8 frames if you want, but you'll be limiting how fast that she can lay. So I would, well, it depends on how big you want your box. If you want to create honey in your backyard beekeeper, you just might want to put a queen excluder and keep her down below. and then keep her from laying in the honey frames just up above. So it's a choice.
Okay.
She will be a stronger colony. It will be a stronger colony if you let her lay in 2 boxes though. And they will also have a bigger ball, like a hive. I call them balls, but cluster. It'll be a bigger cluster. So in the winter, there's 2 wintering methods. There's 1 box or 2. So usually what happens is in the winter, right before the winter, they've stored all their food up above, which is their insulation, and she's laid all down below. And once all those babies hatch, there's not much food there. They'll start to backfill some of that in the fall, but they have no food but up above. So they go up above and they nest across the top one in the winter. And then what you do in the spring is you move that box down below because they've eaten all the honey out, and she starts laying in there.
And you swap the food boxes?
Yep, from the second to the first. So I generally work with a 2 brood box system because the cluster can move and it provides some more flexibility. If you limit her down, the cluster has to follow her, and they can, unless you're paying attention, you don't have to pay as much attention. If you're wintering them 2 boxes, you've got more flexibility, and so do they.
And for 2 boxes, am I establishing a stronger hive, or is my goal more honey?
That would be your goal. Every time you go into a hive, you should have a goal in mind. So why am I going to look? Oh, I'm going to go check my sugar water to see if it's empty. You can check to see that she's still laying nicely and she's got lots of brood right across the bottom. She will be fine. You won't have to worry about her here on Vancouver Island until about the beginning, and it just gives them a little bit extra strength and nutrition for fighting off the wasps that are in the middle of August, and mites and everything else.
And that's called the dearth, when things dry up. And
yeah, there's no food, no nectar. When it's dry, the plants can't produce any nectar. There's no water, right?
okay.
So in Vancouver Island, that's a big problem. I grew up in the Fort St. John area, the North Peace, and that doesn't exist. They have lots of nectar and lots of pollen right through the summer. If the wasps are a problem, slow them down. Yep, you can slow them down when they're going full on.
So what's this called, a guard?
It's an entrance reducer.
Okay.
So it's reducing the entrance. This would be for a small colony, and you can just flip it this way, and they can go out that one door, or you can go. How would this go? You can go like this. And this gives them this one and this one if you don't push it in very far. You know what I mean? So you can go like that, and then they would have 2 different entrances.
Why do they want 2?
Just more volume to go out. And if they're full on 2 boxes, I wouldn't even have this on here. Like, because you can see when they start traffic jamming. These guys will be building up. It's getting warmer now, so I would probably do this one.
Okay. Now, after I feed them, like, when do I want to put on that second brood box?
So when you have 7 frames of bees across the top of the frames.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm not going to exclude the queen because I want her to lay.
It would be a choice, but you could exclude her down if you don't want any brood in the upper. I have not used a lot of 8-frame. I haven't used any 8-frame supers before, but I know the cluster is circular. And if I look at this, they could exist in that bottom. She could exist in that bottom, but if it gets to be a big cluster in the wintertime, that she may not have very much feed, especially if you don't put honey frames down below with her before the winter. So with this kind of shape.
What do you suggest? Because I don't know what choice to make.
If you have the supers for it, I would choose 2, because it's only 8 frames across. That's 16 total. I would choose 2 brood boxes because they're both deeps, right?
Yeah.
And that she would lay across the bottom mostly. She'd get some brood up top, and they would be filling honey across the top, and that's probably as far as they'll get in the first year as a nuke.
And then I'm not getting honey this year, so
No.
I'm not putting supers on.
No, and another key thing too is that the biggest mistake a lot of beekeepers go, they say, wow, there's lots of bees in here. Let's put on another empty super. Well, that's more space to regulate. If you keep them squished, and tight, like it's not our spacing, it's their spacing. If you keep them squished and tight, they seem to build up a lot quicker. They don't have as far to travel, all that kind of stuff, and they seem to want to build up more to the point where they can swarm, basically. They have an instinct to swarm. So if you keep them tight as long as you can, without them building many swarm cells, if they get swarm cups, that's usually, a cup is it looks like a start of a queen cell, but there's no egg in it.
Okay.
You usually just flick those off and you go, oh, okay, it looks like they're getting to the point where, yeah, maybe I should start putting on another one.
To give them more space.
Yes.
Okay.